Okay, so hello and welcome to everybody on our first Fida members moments. And I guess we're quite blessed with Ashley who's come here today. Hopefully her internet doesn't pack in because she's getting lots of snow. So if she does buzz out, the snow's got too thick and pulled her out. And I guess the goal of this is really for Ashley to share her portfolio, talk about her work, share her ideas, and I guess give us a bit of an insight into her passion. So I'm just going to share my screen so we can see Ashley's work. We'll just get onto the first screen and I'll just put it on here. Okay, so Ashley, what I'd like you to do, if you could, is just give us a quick introduction about you and your life and your work and your desire and why you've chosen to do fashion illustration, and then discuss some of the pieces on here and what you're intrigued by at the moment and what you're doing in your own practice.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I am diving into the world of fashion illustration. I started really getting inspired by it probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it's because it's a blend of two of my greatest loves, which is fashion, specifically vintage fashion, and drawing. And I wanted to create a career where I could do both. So yeah, I do a blend of traditional and digital mediums. So I work a lot with watercolor, pen, ink, markers. And then I also work in Procreate on the iPad, which is a fantastic drawing app. So my first image on the left-hand side is just a quick study in watercolor of a runway look. I'd really like to start developing my portfolio as far as doing quick runway sketches or quick fashion sketches in like 15 minutes or less, because live fashion illustration is becoming really popular, which is fantastic news for artists such as myself. So yeah, I'd love to develop my portfolio and do a lot of these styles of sketches, so I can do live event illustration. So that's one thing I'm really focused on right now. The top middle piece was just a fun piece. I love, again, anything vintage. So these are vintage dress forms. Obviously, they're very fashion related. So I just love the shadows, the very subtle colors. I think they're just a very beautiful, like still life object to render. So that's also done in watercolor. The bottom middle is from Schiaparelli's recent collection. Schiaparelli was an Italian designer. It's one of my favorite design houses, if not my top favorite. And I was really inspired because my best friend and I actually recently went to Paris to see the Schiaparelli exhibit, which was just awe-inspiring. She was very focused on working with surrealism and incorporating that into her designs. And she kind of just like blew up as a designer and made some really avant-garde, wild, weird stuff. And Daniel Roseberry, who's the creative director now of the fashion house, I think is really doing a magnificent job in creating collections that I think Schiaparelli would be very happy with. So yeah, the bottom middle piece is just kind of showcases some of the jewelry from a recent collection. So we've got the earring, it's very large, and then the necklace, which it's kind of small on the screen, but at the end there's like it's like a gold cast tooth. And I just think they do such bizarre work at that fashion house that I find it very exciting and inspiring. So I'm very Schiaparelli focused these last few months.
And
And then on the,
I was just going
what's
to
that?
say, I guess the Schiaparelli has really pulled back a lot of the sort of Salvador Dali side of Schiaparelli, which I think had been lost.
Yeah. Yeah. And the two did work together when she was, still alive, or when they were both still alive, and made some very iconic work together. And I think that's really intriguing because it was like one of the first very famous like artist collaborations, which is something that we're experimenting a lot with in the current social media age. So yeah, and Dolly has always been one of my favorite artists as well, so it's kind of like a dream duo for me personally. And top right was just a little experiment from a couple days ago of it's a Dior outfit from the 1940s. So I use a lot of references of vintage fashion images, specifically from like Vogue, Harper's Bazaar. I have a deep rabbit hole of Pinterest boards where I just like collect images that inspire me. I also have a lot of fashion and art books, vintage Vogues that I like to page through, and just I find endless inspiration there. So if ever I'm stuck and trying to figure out what I should work on for the day, I have thousands of beautiful images to choose from that I've scoured from the internet. So
and also just looking at this new image that you've created, it's quite interesting the proportions that you're bringing back of that sort of from 1920s to 1940s, them really small hips, this sort of oversized shoulder. It's almost accentuating the beauty of fashion, which I think is a little bit maybe lost through streetwear coming in, because we've done oversized and we're losing the silhouette a little bit from the figure. And I think Schiaparelli is one of the only designers who, and I guess Dior, who's really playing with the silhouette and experimenting with the shape of the silhouette that echoes the figure, which I think your work really celebrates, which is
yeah, absolutely. I really love vintage fashion for that reason, because it was so flattering on these figures, and it's just so like feminine and curvy, and like that hourglass shape is generally quite prominent. And I'm obsessed with that glamour, the vintage glamour of those decades. Because they simply don't make clothing like that anymore. Or I mean, I guess there's a few like couture exceptions, but like in everyday wear, you really don't see outfits like that. And I just love the glamour of it all. I think it's just strikingly beautiful, and I'm always inspired by it. Yeah. And yes, Dior is one of my very favorites. 1940s Dior specifically was just perfect.
Yeah. Okay. And then to these digital works.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I work a lot in Procreate, which is an app that you can get for $10 for the iPad, and it changed my entire life. Quite honestly, I got it probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it's one of the best investments I ever made. I bought myself an iPad, an Apple Pencil, and the Procreate app, and it just changed everything. It's just so versatile. It's so easy to use. It's very user friendly. You can do, I mean, endless things with it. It's so much fun. So if you're looking to experiment with digital, I'd highly recommend Procreate. The first image on the left was just an image that I found from a shoemaker. Gianvito Rossi, and I just thought these shoes were magnificent. Again, I'm obsessed with glamour and very feminine things, so I just love these jeweled shoes, and I loved the cast shadow of these gems. So I decided I wanted to render that, and I had a lot of fun with this one. And I'll pick these specific images from these current brands because essentially I'm kind of like fishing for their attention. You know, I'll post my creations with their logo on my Instagram, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll see them and be like, hey, do you want to work with us? Create some custom illustrations for our brand, because that's ultimately what I want to do in the commercial fashion illustration space. So it's kind of nice to get 2 in 1. You practice your work and potentially, you know, expose yourself to these brands that you want to work with. So yeah, the one on the left is digital. As I said, everything on this page is done digitally. The top middle is from a drawing cabaret couture class, and that is a weekly live drawing class that's held over Zoom, and it's fantastic. There's a lot of really wonderful illustrators that I admire that participate, and they just feature some really wild designers. Obviously, like a lot of cabaret inspired clothing. The models are fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. So, and it's like kind of a nice community to be a part of. So I recently joined Drawing Cabaret Couture, and that's another outlet that I would highly recommend for anyone that's wanting to practice their life drawing skills, and wanting to just like have some fun and practice rendering, you know, couture garments, cabaret garments. It's a ton of fun. So that's that. The bottom middle is a man I've already mentioned in this meeting. That's Daniel Roseberry from Schiaparelli, their current creative director. I just have this fascination with the profile of the face. I think it's beautiful. And you know, I love seeing like a person's nose. I love an interesting nose. So that's something you'll see in my portfolio often is figures drawn in profile. So yeah, that was just a little practice of Daniel. I don't draw men very often, but I often forget how much I enjoy it. So yeah, that's Daniel. And then the top right is a handbag from a French handbag designer. They're a relatively new brand called Helene. And this was actually a brand that my friend and I discovered in our recent trip to Paris when we went to the Schiaparelli show. This is a handbag designer. They make incredible stuff, and it feels like luxury, like level couture, but it's, you know, not $10,000 for a handbag. It's much more reasonably priced than that. So their showroom was beautiful. All of their products are just stunning. And I was really inspired by basically everything in their shop. So I decided to draw my favorite handbag that they offer. Again, on Procreate. And it was fun to kind of study the texture of the handbag because it's a lizard grain leather. So I wanted to kind of practice rendering different textures of, you know, fabrics and leathers and things like that.
Yeah, I just say, Ashley, it's quite interesting you picking brands that are not so high brand, as we'd say, and you're finding these sort of boutique, off the road sort of luxury brands, and there's some great brands out there, and I think it's a real space for up and coming fashion illustrators to really make a mark. So I think personally, with the growth of like your portfolio and your work, is really to sort of target them spaces, the people that maybe aren't the Louis Vuittons and the Pradas. You know, they're the little boutiques, and they seem to embrace fashion illustration a little bit more. They have a bit more of
Mhm.
a romance, a bit more of the artistic side comes into their products. So I think this is a really good direction, and like you were talking about tagging through Instagram, these probably would get less tagging than the other big brands. So you're more likely to get some sort of traction from them. But I really, you know, the rendering's lovely, and I think there's lots of projects. Early projects that I got was to draw lots of bag collections for smaller brands, and they might want to represent their branding in a certain way, and you'll just redraw all of their products, and then they might get you to change some of them sometimes, like do different colorways, um, and you can be a lot more experimental with the outcomes as well. So that's the beauty of doing brands that aren't necessarily these big commercial brands, where it's very like set in stone the way that the art direction is going to be. So I think that's uh, a really good direction for you, and also it it taps into your vintage side as well, which you're really interested in. So make sure that what you do is moving forward is the DNA of your practice almost mirrors what you illustrate, and then you see more authentic and genuine. And I think that's good. So it's great to see you're doing it naturally. It's just to have it in your head to do it, which is good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I do consciously kind of incorporate illustrating these smaller brands, not only because I love what they're doing and their product and their whole aesthetic, but yeah, it would be a little presumptuous of me to come out of nowhere as an illustrator, because I really don't have like much of a reputation in the field as of yet. You know, so I don't want to come out the gate just, you know, asking Dior or Louis Vuitton or Prada or Chanel, like, hey, you don't know me, nobody does, but can I illustrate for your massive multi-million-dollar brand? So yeah, I feel like it's good to start small. You know, even working with friends like locally. You know, I have some friends that own a small shop nearby, a vintage shop, and you know, I've offered to like illustrate some of the pieces that they sell in their shop, and then they can sell those illustrations in the shop, and then also I'm getting exposure as well. So it's just like, I think it's important to start small, and it's good to be like ambitious and want to work with those major brands, but I feel like it's more realistic to again start small. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah,
trying to do.
yeah. But think big. Don't think small.
Yes.
Think big.
Yeah.
Be courageous, and you know, when I see the Christian Dior one, I think it's lovely. You know, I love it, and I could genuinely see it within their space. And it feels like you've modernized it a little bit, brought it into the Technicolor world. So I think it's a great little piece, and I know, you know, you're slowly growing this portfolio of work, and it's a really good, I guess, a beginning for you. And as I said to you, it was quite courageous of you to come to be our first. So it was good. It was a good sort of opening segue for you. And I guess maybe at the end of the year, you know, we could have a revisit and see what you've brought forward in your work. Like we spoke about the vintage swing tags, you know, all them
Mhm.
sorts of things. So I feel that a good direction for you is to bring some of them into play and have these hardcore sort of targets for yourself, for the portfolio. So I definitely feel that you're moving in the right direction. It's just like everybody, it's kind of like a bit of a rat race, and
Yeah.
and don't be too uninspired by Instagram, because Instagram can cause a lot of negativity where you're
Oh
seeing
yeah.
everyone creating all this great work and you feel like, oh, well, when's my chance going to happen? You just have to keep plodding along and almost switch yourself off to it and guide yourself. Don't be influenced by Instagram too much, because it can, and with the algorithms and all of this is what I'm seeing so much now. It can become a bit depressing from
Absolutely.
a creative point of view. Creatives really need to switch themselves off to Instagram and not be influenced, because it's like an influencer to you. So you have to head down and focus and have, you've got your little list of things to kind of plan out for your portfolio. And, with regards to your direction, I think it's going to be an interesting little journey that you're going to go on. And I know you're now thinking of drawing a series of vintage pieces as well.
Yeah, yeah. I do also sell and wear women's vintage clothing, which is something I've done for quite a long time at this point. Um, and I have some really fantastic garments that are just so one of a kind. You never see them anywhere else. So part of my action plan that Patrick and I developed for the next few months is to illustrate some of those pieces. Again, for practice, of course, it's the most important part, but for also like falling in line and being consistent with, the things that I'm passionate about. And any like cross marketing that you can do between like your passions, I think is great. Again, like I sell and wear women's vintage clothing. I'm obsessed with vintage design. Anyone that knows me is very well aware of this. And incorporating that into my art, which is also something I've been very passionate about my entire life, I think is a really great way to be authentic within your work. And I think when an artist is authentic and kind of showing their true selves through their work, I think people are very responsive to that as far as, clients and brands and fans. So
Yeah.
it's, again, I just love blending the two, the vintage design and the art.
Yeah. Good. Let's just see, because I think you had some questions. So I noticed, because this was sort of a last minute ditch from you to put your name in, which was really great of you. And I can see someone on here. So I don't know if you have any questions or if anyone has any questions. You could either put it in the chat. We have a chat somewhere. So, or I don't know if you want to share anything more, Ashley, because the goal of these is to keep them quite short and sharp.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
we're lucky the snow's not knocked it out, your
I
connection.
know it's the weather is quite violent outside right now. I'm a little concerned. Um, I did want to touch again on what you're talking about with Instagram, which is I am constantly struggling with like with Instagram, not feeling good enough, wishing I had more followers, wondering what I'm doing wrong, wondering, I've been on this app for years and years and years. I feel like I post great content, great work, but like it's just not hitting. The algorithm has just forgotten about me. And there's all these other artists on here that are phenomenally talented and working on these major projects with big brands. And like it's so easy to get wrapped up in comparing yourself to other people that are doing what you want to do. It's easy to think that your work is crap because it's not reflected in your following, and like it's so silly, and I hate that. I get down on myself because of it, but I know a lot of people do. So my best suggestion is to just keep doing the work. Try not to compare yourself to others, and just keep practicing, because again, it's easy to get wrapped up in trying to follow this algorithm and like trying to post and studying other people on Instagram, seeing what they're doing right, you can spend or waste so much time trying to crack that code, and you could be spending that time doing the actual work and getting better.
Yeah,
So
I agree 100%, and I think a lot of people, things will happen, and you could have, like someone said, you can have 20 followers, and if 10 of them are commissioning you, then you're 10 times better than those who've got 100,000 followers and only one commissioner. So in theory, niche, smaller groups is fine, and I think this sort of working within your local sphere of antique shops, boutiques, spaces like that, I think is a great sort of opportunity for you to kind of get your voice out there. And then you it slowly mushrooms.
yeah.
And also you need to have not one omni-channel of communication. It's multiple, like you said, you use Pinterest. I think Pinterest is a great space now for promoting
Mm-hmm.
portfolios, promoting work. It's a really good sort of way of communicating to lots of people who commission work. And I think a lot of people don't take it seriously as a platform for promoting work, especially creative work. I think Pinterest promotes good creative work. So, and it organically promotes it. So when I see Pinterest sending me stuff, it targets me with lots of fashion illustration, lots of fashion work. So I see an array of people being promoted to me all the time. So I think Pinterest is a great space. I think LinkedIn is really good from a business to business, like trying to network with brands and communicate with them. Uh, Twitter is more of a dialogue, is an information space. I think not so visual. And TikTok is just is a minefield. Is very much like where Instagram's sort of heading. So I think TikTok's good training for you for making reels. So I feel that when you're making your art, is you have to be a filmmaker, an animator, an editor, an illustrator, a communicator. And I think all of them areas are part of your sphere to your communication. You're a communicator, and I think that's what's going to have to be part of your puzzle moving forward. But the networking with the local people, showing portfolio work, I think is a real beginning point for you moving forwards. And I think for me personally, that's the area that I would recommend for you to hone your skills now, and give yourself really hard targets with making them happen, rather
Mm-hmm.
than oh well I'll leave it to this time and I'll shift it to there. You need set yourself these little boundary goals, and then once you hit the targets, create new ones. And I think because you know, for me, in 6 months' time, I want to see you've ticked some of the boxes for your portfolio goals, rather than sitting indoors, creating nice work, create real work, create opportunities. And I think that's sort of our way going forward. So that's the sort of plan of action for you, and this
Mm-hmm.
reconstruction of the portfolio, I guess. And I think the work's credible. I think the work's good. As I did say to you, this isn't really a crit. It's more of a discussion about your work and who you are. So it's quite nice to see you becoming more authentic and genuine about your portfolio. And I feel it's now in a good. It's You've got the starting blocks ready, and I think we just now need to make it happen. And real clients will shape your work. That's when it will get a little bit tougher, because you'll have real clients giving real feedback and targeting you with their personal opinion, and how you keep your work your own, rather than it becoming the client's work. And that's the
Right.
hardest part. It's a hard task, because you know
Mm-hmm.
you need to make the project happen. And I think that's the shifting of that portfolio and building a robust portfolio that you are genuinely proud of. I think that's, but many artists, when they build their portfolio, sometimes their personal work is the work they really want. And they hope that it will become that. Where a lot of the time the commercial work is a little bit shinier, not as gravelly, and you're not as in love with it, but it serves its purpose. So I think
Right.
don't be too down on yourself sometimes with the commercial side of image making. I think that's quite an important part of it. So hopefully we've been half an hour, so we've managed to get through it quite quick. So I'm hoping at the end of the year, Ashley, I reckon we need a revisit portfolio of the growth of yourself and the new direction of where we're going to go. And I thought you were very brave, and I guess everybody's waiting to see how you get on to benchmark themselves moving forwards. And this portfolio opportunity is really for people just to talk about their work and have a talk about their practice. So I'm very impressed that you kind of put yourself forward first, and well done and congratulations. And I'm genuinely looking forward to December to see your work for Christmas, like where you're going to go and what your plan is.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity and you showcasing the little guys like myself. And yeah, it's always fun. Love Fida. I'm really excited that I've joined. I've already learned a lot. I love the commercial fashion illustration course. And yeah, my portfolio's expanded a ton, even in the last 2 months since I started taking the course. So thank you, Patrick. And I look forward to seeing everything else that I create for the rest of the year.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ashley. So have a good night, and we look forward to looking back and watching this later on.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye, Ashley.